guys, welcome to the Radiate Your Faith podcast. My name is Maddie Walko, and I'm a college softball player from the great state of Texas. And I'm so excited that you are tuning into the Radiate Your Faith podcast, where I hope you are encouraged to let the light of Christ shine through you in a way that allows people to see God through the way that you walk with Him. My prayer for you is that your faith is deepened, that it is strengthened, and that you are encouraged to radiate your faith. Hey guys, welcome to the Radiate Your Faith podcast. I am so excited that you guys are joining me. This week we have a familiar face back on the podcast. She's been on before, and we did the episode, Everyone's Called to Ministry, including you. So I'm just going to go ahead and let her reintroduce herself for those of you who may not know her.
Hello again. I'm Tori. I don't know, maybe I look a little bit different this time, not on FaceTime, but I'm glad to be here in person. These lights are so bright. I have known Maddie for a really long time. We've grown up together pretty much. I'm an Aggie, henceforth, whoop. Studying psychology, want to go into vocational ministry. I think those are the things you probably would care to know about me.
Yes, we've been friends for a very long time. And what's cool about our friendship is the fact that we both became friends before we were both living for the Lord. And we both found that on our own, still in the middle of our friendship. Mm-hmm. And it's been cool to see different stages of each other's lives as we've grown up together. We've been there for everything, literally everything. True. So I'm very excited about this week's episode. But before we start, y'all, I gotta share, this morning has been a hot mess. Okay. So Tori stayed the night last night. My parents are going on a trip, so I'm in charge of the dogs. Okay. Parents hadn't even been gone. They've been gone 3 hours. Our dog Moses. Oh, what a cutie. Good thing he's cute, huh? Oh. He proceeded to break his own kennel. Destroy his own kennel.
It's actually like bent. Things that were fused are no longer together.
Yes.
It's so bad.
And then he proceeded to poop all over my parents' bathroom.
And then he ate it.
And that was just a little traumatic. It was a really rough thing to wake up to this morning.
Good morning.
So me and Tori spent the morning cleaning, and calling my parents and having my parents laugh at me, for this taking place. And then after that, we got ready to film, and wasp decided to attack us for probably 10 minutes straight. And I threw many things at it and missed. Tori killed him with a paper plate. So this morning's been a little chaotic.
I'm seeing his grave. It's out of frame, obviously, but his grave is to the side here. Oh my. He gone. Rest in peace.
Wow. Anyways, oh
gosh.
On a lighter note, so today's episode topic is going to be Christian sayings that aren't biblical, and then some sayings that just aren't biblical. But I asked a bunch of y'all on Instagram some questions, or asked the question of what are some things you've heard people say. And so we got a lot of responses, and we're going to talk about all of them. And yeah, we're just going to kind of go into it because this could take us a while. So there's a lot of them.
There's so many phrases that people say all the time that are just not correct.
Not correct. Yeah. Yes. No. We're going to start with the saying, God won't give you more than you can handle. I'll let you talk about this one first.
I really do not like this one. This is actually the phrase that inspired this podcast episode, because I saw someone posted some like reposted a story on Instagram that said something about that. And I was like, ooh, have you read the Bible? Read the Old Testament and just tell me what you think. Because really, we're called to dependency on God. Something that I've been just learning over the course of this summer is that our response to God's total sufficiency should be just full dependency. And so God is going to give you more than you can handle on your own, because He wants you to draw near to Him. In James 4, it talks about how as we draw near to Him, He's going to draw near to us. And so when God gives us more than we can handle on our own, it gives us an opportunity to draw near to Him so that He may draw near to us. So really, it's an extension of God's grace and mercy to us that He allows us those opportunities to just come closer to Him in relationship. So He will give you more than you can handle on your own. That's the caveat.
Yeah. And I think it's good that He does, because the things that are hard that we go through, if we try and go through it in our own strength and we know we did it on our own, like what good is that? Whenever he gives us opportunity to go through hardships in which we have to solely rely on his strength, and that the people around us and who know us and go through those things with us can see that it was the Lord's strength. Like, how much of a testimony is that to people? Like, if everything was super easy and super comfortable and we could rely on our own strength, like,
your hardship definitely gives you a platform to be able to share the goodness of God with people.
Yes, exactly.
So this is in 2 Corinthians chapter 1, starting in the middle of verse 8. It says, "For we were so utterly burdened beyond our strength that we were despaired of life itself. Indeed, we felt that we had received the sentence of death, but that was to make us rely not on ourselves, but on God who raises the dead." So Paul there is just talking about like how when they were near to the point of death, like they were almost dead, God had mercy on them. And in that, they had to rely on God's strength because they had no strength left on their own. So just a biblical example of just Paul, New Testament, and his letters experiencing that.
And how much peace does it give you knowing that you don't have to rely on your own strength? Like, that's awesome. And my reading this morning in Job 12 talked about how strength belongs to the Lord. It's his. And so if we seek that from him and rely on his strength to get us through things, like, God's victorious. He's gonna pull us through it, but we can't do it on our own. Next saying is, God gives his toughest battles to his strongest warriors.
Oh, I can't stand this one either. On most of these, I'm just gonna be like, I can't handle this. I know this is kind of like a meme on Instagram. Like I've seen something that's like, God gives his hurtiest tummies to his strongest warriors. Like,
oh, like people make fun of it.
Yeah. Yeah. But it kind of just goes back to the fact that strength isn't ours.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's really it's very closely related to God won't give you more than you can handle, because he won't. And think about David and Goliath. Like, do you think that David was God's strongest warrior?
No.
He was a shepherd, bro. Ain't no way. He was not even a soldier. But God still used him in that way. So he's not gonna use the strongest people all the time. In our weakness, God's power is made perfect. So that is very anti-biblical to say that he's gonna give you hard things because you're strong, because you're not. We just talked about that. You're not strong on your own. And thank goodness we don't have to do things on our own, and that God gives us opportunities to draw near to him in that way.
Yeah. And how many times in the Bible does the Lord pick the strongest person to show his glory? No, not very often. Yes. And so it's cool that God uses the people that people wouldn't expect for his glory. He uses the least of us to do what he's called him to. Think of, like, I guess David's a great example. Like, he was puny, he was tiny. His dad was like, this guy, king? Psh, you're crazy. Look at all these big, strong brothers he's got. And it's like, God's like, no, this is the one I want. This is the one I'm going to use. And that should give you confidence in the fact that if you don't feel confident in what God's calling you to, like, I don't feel like I can do this. It's not about you. And it's never been about you. Amen. It's about God's strength and what he's going to do through you. So,
oof. Come on now.
Firework.
Say it.
Next one. God will give you the desires of your heart.
This one's complicated, and we're both gonna weigh in heavily on this one because I lean far on one direction and Chief leans far on one direction, and
there's different perspectives.
Yeah, but we both understand where the truth is, I think.
Yes.
So I really don't like this because our hearts are deceitful. Jeremiah 17:9 talks about that. The heart is deceitful above all things. Who can understand it? Like,
ain't nobody. I still don't I don't understand my heart.
I don't even know. But if we got all the desires of our hearts, which are still affected by sin, even after you're saved, maybe your nature is no longer sinful, but you still sin, and your desires are sometimes still sinful. So your desires, all of your desires, are not going to be the things that God's going to give you, because he knows that that's not good for you all the time, with the caveat that Maddie will discuss now.
Yes. So there is a verse in the Bible, Psalm 37:4, that says, delight in the Lord and he will give you the desires of your heart. But I think what it's important to note is the first thing it says is delight in the Lord. The more we pursue the Lord, the more that our desires are going to align with what he has for us. And I think of my church back in Waco talked about it, but whenever we align our hearts with his, we want our answer or his answer to become our answer. And so whenever we do that, that can kind of point back to, okay, when we first delight in the Lord, then he'll give us the desires of our heart. If we are delighting in what the Lord's giving us, that's the desire of our heart, is just to be aligned with him. So it does say that he will give you the desires of your heart, but you have to take it with the understanding that if you're desiring something that isn't glorifying to the Lord, then that's not a desire he's going to provide you.
Yeah, absolutely. Just like think about it for a moment. If you think about over the course of your entire life, before you were saved and even after, if you got everything your heart desired, where would you be right now? And if you got it all in the timing that you wanted, where would you be? Probably not in a very good place. So it is a great thing that God doesn't give us all the desires of our hearts that are not in line with his will for us. Especially
when we want them. Because you can have the best intentions going into saying, I desire this, but if God gave it to you at the time you asked for it, there could be so much preparation that you miss out on, or that is necessary for that thing you're asking for. And so I always think that timing is just as important as intentionality. Like those two things have to align, and you have to rely on the Lord to bring about that timing and the intentionality. Because you could get what you want, and it could be a good and glorifying thing to the Lord, but if the time's wrong and you're trying to make it happen, it could go wrong, because there's so much that goes into those sort of things. Next one. Everything that comes from God will come with peace and clarity. Ooh, this one's one that I have had a lot of learning experiences with. So I'm just going to start off with the biblical story of Jonah. The Lord was calling him to go to Nineveh, and he had clarity about it. The Lord had told him to go to Nineveh, but he didn't have peace about it. So what happened? He said, nah, I'm not going to do that. And they got by a whale. Like that stinks. And so I mean, that's just a biblical example, but there's been so many times in my life where I have known and had clarity, or that I need to go do something, that the Lord's calling me to something, but I don't have peace about it. Like, God, why are you calling me to this thing? Well, I don't have peace about it. But what I've learned through that is, you might not understand at the time, but once you take that step of obedience, which this is what we learned at church camp, is sometimes the confirmation doesn't come till after the step of obedience. Sometimes you have to step out in faith and allow God to reveal to you that, yes, this is the thing, or no, this is not the thing. Because if we always knew the answer, what's the point of faith? There's no faith. Faith is believing in things that we haven't seen, you know? Yeah. So, and Hebrews also 11:1. But it also, like, Habakkuk 1:5 is one of my favorite verses of all time. And it says, look among the nations and see, behold and be astounded, for I am doing a work in your days that you would not believe told. And so that kind of goes along with the fact that, like, maybe we don't understand in the moment, or as it's happening, why it's happening, or why it's not happening when we want it to happen. But a lot of times we're able to look back and see how God was working through that, even though we didn't like it and it wasn't our plan for ourselves and our timing. God is still working. He doesn't just stop working because it stops being the way that you would imagine things would go. So yeah. And him calling you to stuff too doesn't mean it's going to be comfortable. Over the last 2 years, I have learned that a lot. I was in a place I knew the Lord was calling me to. And even now coming out of it, I can see that is what the Lord, Tori get all excited looking at the Bible. I can see that's where the Lord put me, and he put me there with purpose. Yeah. But that did not mean that I was happy all the time, that I was comfortable all the time. If anything, those were the 2 hardest years of my life. I struggled to have peace. I struggled to have clarity, but because I relied on the Lord, and the thing I did have peace about was being there, even though I struggled so hard. There wasn't peace there for a very, very long time. And that's why you can't allow your feelings to become your truth. Oh, that was such a good word. I love that, especially coming from you, because you are such an emotional person. I'm an emotional gal. There's nothing wrong with emotions, but they can't lead your life, because emotions will lie to you sometimes. They're reactionary. They aren't truth. But when you were talking about that, like being uncomfortable, there's someone from a ministry I'm in at A&M. It's called Impact, and her thing that she says all the time is that, like, we should be getting uncomfortable for the gospel. And so that always makes me think of 1 Peter 1:6-7, which says, in this you rejoice, though now for a little while, if necessary, you've been grieved by various trials, so that the tested genuineness of your faith, more precious than gold that perishes, though it's tested by fire, may be found to result in praise and glory and honor at the revelation of Jesus Christ. So we go through trials
like fire, like gold goes through fire to be purified. And fire's not comfortable. Fire's not something that you're like, yes, I am so excited today to jump into the fire
Oh,
of
yeah.
the trials.
I've been on fire before. It doesn't feel very good.
Yeah. Oh, throwback. 3 years old. Anyway, her legs grilled, if you didn't know.
Yeah, fun fact of the day.
But fire's not comfortable. But fire is when we grow and when we're purified, our faith is purified, which is glorifying to the Lord. And so
and it shows the genuineness of your faith.
Yeah.
I think the hardest stuff that I've gone through, when I lose everything that I find comfort in and I just have the Lord, or I mean, any situation like that, it's always like, because I'm going through this, it deepens the appreciation I already have for my faith. But it's also like, it's so genuine because that's what I cling to. And that can't be taken away from me because of anyone. It's not dependent on anyone. It's dependent on God and how he's come through. And even when he doesn't, you know his character. Like, I think it's easy to doubt when you don't know his heart, but when you know his character and you know his heart and you believe that to be true.
And you understand it.
And you understand it.
You can know so many things, but it doesn't make any difference in your life until you understand it.
Yes.
But when you truly understand it, like, that's when life change happens. That's when you can depend on God.
That's where security and hope and confidence come from too, is knowing his character. So those are all very, very important things. So this one says, God's will for us is to be happy.
And
That's
I
funny.
hate this one so much because, again, where are you getting this from? Absolutely not. That is not what God's will for us is. God's will is his glory and our good. Okay. And our good is not our plans happening the way we want them to happen. Our good is not our happiness all the time. Sometimes our good is suffering so that we may be purified in faith, which is ultimately glorifying to God. Anything that brings God glory is for our good because our purpose is to ultimately glorify God. And so when we're fulfilling that and living that out, there is contentment for us in any situation. And actually, Paul talks about that in Philippians.
Can I note something too?
Yeah.
Our definition of good isn't the same definition as God's definition of good. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, our good isn't God's good.
And I think it is important to note that his greatest desire for us is not that we would suffer. It's that we would know him more intimately. And he can and will use any broken part of this world, which includes illness, to draw us nearer to him, which is for our good and his glory. Okay, Philippians 4. This is 11 through 13. I'm sure we all know Philippians 4:13, but have you heard the context? Let's talk about it. It says, Paul's saying here, not that I'm speaking of being in need, for I have learned in whatever situation I am in to be content. For I know how to be brought low, and I know how to abound in any and every circumstance. I have learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. And so really, the whole concept of I can do all things through him who gives me strength, like, it's saying I can endure all situations and have contentment in them regardless, because I know who God is and what he's done and what he says he will do. And that can give you stability and security and the sense of peace and contentment and joy regardless of circumstance. Not saying you need to be happy all the time.
No.
There are times where you should mourn and there should be sorrow, and that's okay. And God is still with you in those moments. Absolutely. God is near to the brokenhearted. But at the same time, that doesn't have to be the end of the story. You can have contentment in that situation and beyond. So
yeah, and I even think it's important to talk about the difference between happiness and joy, because happiness is dependent on circumstance, joy is not.
Yeah, joy is constant.
Yeah, when our joy is found in the Lord, that can't be taken away. So I could be heartbroken and still have joy because that's not dependent on my circumstances. My joy is dependent on the Lord, and that doesn't change. God's the same today, yesterday, and forever.
Yep.
So I think it's important to note that too. And yeah, that happiness, God, I think he does rejoice in the good times with us. He rejoices when we rejoice. That's a really cool thing, but he doesn't always desire for us to be happy, because sometimes the hardest stuff that we go through is the most important in our stories.
And sanctifying, like,
yes,
again, like, makes us more like Jesus.
Yes, very much so. We're dwindling down on time, so we're going to kind of run through the more just sayings in general that aren't glorifying to the Lord or that aren't in line with scripture. So first is, I'm losing faith in humanity.
you're already losing if you have faith in humanity. That's just
True.
point number one, because if your faith is in something that's unstable, which is anything except for the Lord, you're going to be severely disappointed over and over. Next.
You made me laugh.
Why?
Worldly L. You're already losing.
Take that L, bro. Take it.
Yes.
Except go back to the Lord with it. Don't just take the L and stay like that.
Yes. Okay, the next one is you're a good person.
No, you're not. No, you're not. Okay, we're born into brokenness. We're born into sin. You are not a good person. James 1:17. I'm just going to flip to it. But the point is that every good and perfect thing comes from the Lord. And so any good thing in you or around you is a gift from God. It is not something you deserve. You didn't earn that. What you actually earned is death. For the wages of sin is death. Romans tells us that. But the free gift of God is eternal life in Christ Jesus. Yes. But the wages of sin is death. So if we got what we deserved, you don't want what you deserve. Don't talk about deserving things. Okay.
Be dead.
Yeah. No. You'd be dead.
Gift of grace.
And I'm just gonna read James 1:17. So we have the actual word of God going here. Every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow due to change. So again, God is unchanging, and every good thing comes from him, and we are not good in ourselves. Thank you.
And there's no good thing apart from the Lord.
Yes, absolutely. Again, you don't deserve that.
It's a gift
of
grace that you can't earn. That's something I've been learning too, is I feel like I have to be good enough to be gifted something from the Lord, or that I have to be good enough to get to keep that gift from the Lord. It's not dependent on you, and it's not dependent on your feelings or what you do. It's dependent on God and his plan for you and his goodness. That's it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay, so last one. This one. Oh, this one gets under my skin. Time heals all wounds. Boy, absolutely not.
Oh, this one's funny. Really, my one point on this is that without forgiveness, time can just build up bitterness and resentment. It doesn't heal automatically. The only thing that heals you is the Lord. And so, or it heals you in any meaningful ways, the Lord. You can distance yourself from pain and your wounds and just not think about them, but that's not healing. It's still there. Even if you don't think about it all the time anymore, it's still there. And
as somebody who's a feelings person, has lots of feelings, I'll tell you, it's okay to feel like hurt. It's okay to acknowledge the fact that you feel those feelings.
You should. It's good to acknowledge those things.
Yes, and you should bring them to the Lord. Yes. Before you bring them to anyone else, you should bring them to the Lord, because he does heal. But it's so important to remember that forgiveness is not a feeling, it's a choice. And you have to choose to forgive somebody. You can't rely on your feelings to get you there. You have to rely on the Lord, bringing it to the Lord, and choosing to forgive them. So that's what I'd say too. And even in the Bible, it says like envy and bitterness rot the bones.
Yeah. What you gonna do about that?
Guys, obviously, time, it does feel like time heals.
It gets easier, maybe.
It gets easier,
but it doesn't mean it's not there.
That's not what's healing you. Yeah. It's the Lord.
My last point, when people talk about, it's so good to be in the house of the Lord this morning, like at church, just make sure you know that the house of the Lord, you are the house of the Lord, first of all. And also, Jesus says, where 2 or more are gathered in my name, there I am with them. Yeah. So like the house of the Lord, it goes back to the house of the Lord is the church, and the church is not a building, the church is the people. Yeah. So just be aware of that. You don't have to wait for Sunday mornings and Wednesday nights to experience God, because when you are saved, the Holy Spirit's in you. You are always experiencing God. Like, that's insane. Don't forget that. And don't let people tell you that church is the only place where you can do that.
Yes. And on the counter side, because there's some people that I know that are like, well, I don't need to go to church because I can do, whatever. Church is also important because it gives you community, and it gives you accountability, and it does strengthen your faith. So church is important.
And it's a command.
But you shouldn't rely on the church to be your faith. That shouldn't be that. You need to have time with the Lord on your own, in your word. All right, guys. Well, this was a very fun episode to film. There's a lot of sayings that we have gone over, and it's been so good. Tori, I'm so glad you have been back on the podcast with me.
Glad to be back.
And I hope you guys have been enjoying the episodes lately. Trying to stay consistent with once a week, every Saturday, 1 p.m. But yeah, so if you guys have any comments, questions, anything like that, leave them below, and I'll get back to you on them. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode and that you are encouraged to radiate your faith.